Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our inaugural Local Government Professionals Comms Network event. Thank you for coming to support this initiative. My name is Kai Lothian. I'm the Manager of Communications and Marketing for the City of Armidale and Chair of the newly formed Local Government Professionals WA Comms Network. Firstly, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we are meeting on, the Whadjuk people. We acknowledge and respect their continuing culture and the contribution they make to the life of this city and this region. In an LG Professionals First, today's presentations are being live streamed for our regional colleagues. So a special welcome to our virtual attendees. And for those of us in the room today, please be aware of the cameras and don't block our viewers' vision if you can help it, please. Now, I would like to welcome the CEO of the City of Canning, Arthur Corrin, to speak to us.
Thank you very much, Kai, and now that I know I'm in front of the cameras... No, actually, sorry about that. So welcome to the storytellers, the narrative shapers, as I see you as in the local government land. Welcome to the City of Canning. The City of Canning is no orphan to communications and issues management. We've had a long history of some pretty exciting and not so exciting things happen in the City of Canning. From once being called the North Korea of local government in our isolationist behaviour, to the dismissal, to the near-death experience with local government amalgamation, and now the resurrection of the City of Canning. One thing I did when I arrived here 2 years ago now, I undertook a review of the organisation and reshaped the organisation, but one thing that stood out was the amazing resilience of the staff who have gone through all of those things and have shone despite some of the negativity that has occurred. I liken the City of Canning to a Tour de France race. At one stage we weren't even in the peloton. We were still
City of South Perth. Among the many things that we all share is the excitement and stress of our constantly evolving field and the new opportunities the evolution of digital offers us every day. Tash, can you change slides, please? Thank you. So today we're going to hear from leading WA digital specialists about what's happening in our industry and in big business in WA. We'll learn about the latest digital opportunities and how to make the most of them for each of our communities. Our speakers will share their insights into what we can get involved in and where we should focus our efforts for the best impact and value. We have 3 presentations today, and following that we're going to have a panel discussion, which most of our presenters are staying for, so we're going to hold many of the questions until then. I'd like to especially thank Andrew Mathwin from new digital agency Firefly 360, who is replacing our 3rd speaker today. Andrew is extremely experienced, and I've been lucky enough to work with him on an award-winning social media campaign in the past. Andrew's done it all in more than 23 years of marketing and has helped some of the country's biggest brands navigate the digital space, from managing the Jetstar Group's social media strategy and crisis response around natural disasters, to the multi-million-dollar digital omni-channel marketing focus for the Spotlight and Anaconda group of brands. He recently left his role as head of marketing at wagering and daily fantasy sports platform Draft Stars, a joint venture between CrownBet, Fox Sports, Seven West Media and partner the AFL, to build the Firefly 360 team in Perth under the belief it's time we reinvent how agencies help marketers and brands in today's world. So we look forward to hearing from Andrew later. And so to housekeeping. Hopefully you saw when you came in on the first slide that if you want to access the Wi-Fi today, the network is CanVisitor and the password is City of Canning, and that's all lowercase, the password. Now, to create some interactivity today, we thought we ought to be digital after all. We'd like to encourage you to get out your phone, tablet or laptop and go to Poll Everywhere so that you can participate in the conversation today. So the link for Poll Everywhere is polllev.com/equal summit 379, which was up earlier, and I will read that out again for you. It's pollev.com, so pollev.com/equal-summit379. I will give you a moment to log in. Oh, looks like some of you already are. So once you are logged in, then you'll be able to answer some questions. And don't worry, the results cloud, obviously, as you can see, is anonymous. So we just want to know how you're feeling today. So far, no one's been brave enough to say that they're angry. I've had coffee, so I'm not angry. Pretty good mix. I think a lot of you are feeling very enthusiastic. A lot of you, there's some room for improvement. Hopefully we can make you more excited as the day goes on. Has everyone managed to log in? Does anyone need me to tell them the address again? Yes? pollev, so pollev.com/equal-summit, so EQUALSUMMIT 379. I'm pretty happy with that. I think everybody's feeling middling to good. That works for me. So we think it's always useful to know where your colleagues are from and who you might want to chat with today. So the next question is, which local government are you from? Canning are obviously fast on the draw. It's a good mix. Got some regional, got lots of city. Well, there you go. There should be someone who knows about anything you want to know today. I'm sure everybody has a useful experience to share, so make sure you make the most of the networking time later on. So our third question is, which topic are you most interested in hearing about today? Hopefully things relating to digital, since that's the focus. I can't really see those answers. There's a lot of social media. That's promising. I think we should be okay covering that. And you all want to know about yourselves, do you? Is that what's going on? Makes sense. We're human. Oh, possibly. There might be answers to the last question. I think we should be able to cover digital. That was very helpfully vague. Thank you. Oh, citizen engagement. Well, there you go. Apparently we can't have any more responses. There we go. Yeah, I was going to say, trust us to be far too verbose. Let's just see if there's anything else exciting coming up. Well, I'm feeling reassured. I'm pretty sure we're covering all of those things. So thank you for not throwing curveballs at us. So I'm going to move on. Before we begin the formal presentations, just a few more items of housekeeping. As I said, a big thank you to the City of Canning for hosting us today. And if you didn't find the bathrooms on your way in, they are located out of this door here and they're also through that door. Okay, you can also go through this side door and they're just out there to the right and then turn right again down the corridor. And should there be need for an evacuation today, please proceed through the double doors and out to the muster point, which is outside to your left in the side car park. Now, are our first presenters here now? Yeah. Cool. So our first presentation is titled Social Media in an Era of Activated Communities. This topic is something I know my team can relate to, and I'm sure it's the same for almost all of you. WA councils are finding themselves increasingly distracted by vocal single-issue groups of newly empowered ratepayers who demand genuine engagement on issues of importance to them. Armed with new tools and platforms, individuals have the power to activate and organise communities of opposition like never before. Social media hasn't created this problem, it has just provided the opportunity to organise. Online communities are just like any other community, and the principles of early engagement, genuine consultation and respectful interaction continue to apply. Could we please welcome Emma Gibbons and Anthony Fisk from CGM.
Good morning. How are you? Good. We're trying to figure out the logistics of the space, so give us a couple minutes and your patience. So good morning. How are y'all doing? Oh, come on. Give me a little. No. So CGM affects change through the delivery of strategic communications across community, government, and media. So what does that actually mean? It means that we have a team of specialists who I kind of consider it like the Avengers, where we each are specialists in our own field, in community engagement, in government relations, in media relations, and we come together and create integrated strategic campaigns and communication strategies. So that's what we do and how we do it. What that means in practice and what our real DNA is campaigners. So what does a campaigner mean? Personally, I'm a political campaigner from the US. I got into this work because I believe that we affect change by bringing people together and creating spaces where people can have conversations. That's how we create change. And similar to these activated communities who are getting up, getting excited, starting to organize online, they also want to affect change. They are beginning to campaign and affect change in the way they see fit. So that's how we can relate to this issue from that background of campaigning. So how do we, when we start a campaign, how do we approach it? We start it by activating the community and engaging them. A lot of community engagement principles here of working with the community to understand what they think and how they think about an issue, and then speaking that to them and working with them in the way they want to participate. It's one of the best ways to get an increased level of participation. And the same principles carry over online. So what audience are you trying to attract? How can you communicate and inform them in the way they want to communicate and be informed? The other piece is then shaping the issues, so identifying why people feel a certain way about an issue and then shaping them or leading them down a path to create change in the way that they see fit. And then mobilizing, and this is the new innovation in campaigning that I've really enjoyed, is watching people who are active online, people who are active offline. They're typically different types of people. There's the people who want to comment and troll and be very engaged in this space. Then there's the people who are activists who want to rally and they want to protest and they want to show up. And those two groups are starting to move between each other. People online are starting to show up and do some protesting offline. And some people who are offline and used to engaging in that way are starting to get on and share things and comment and participate in this dialogue online. And that interplay is really the root of what we're going to be talking about today. And that's sort of the solution, I think, or a solution we could keep in mind when dealing with these affected communities. So one example, we'll click it, it'll be fun. One example of an activated community in a campaign that we participated in recently was the marriage equality campaign. How many of you are aware of this campaign? Great! So, you know, it's kind of a unicorn in some ways, but it is a good example of an activated community. And something that the campaign did quite cleverly was, again, using that online and offline engagement to bring people on the journey. There was a lot of passion and excitement about this issue, so people often went online to seek information or to get involved or to participate, and then we brought them offline. And particularly, I thought it was interesting, they had the national Australians for Marriage Equality page, which had quite a lot of engagement, but then we also created our local page because we knew that locally here in WA, people had different issues, different concerns, and wanted to talk about different things. So again, creating that special space for someone and for the community to participate in that way. And as I said, there was a lot of emotion, a lot of passion on both sides of the debate. That's, you know, it's a challenging issue, but it's also really exciting. For the managing that passion and how to keep all our stakeholders in the same direction, we had to take that passion and put some rules around it. So we created some norms. We created our values in communication, which were respect, positivity, and dignity, and we held stakeholders to that. So if someone started talking about homophobia or starting to be really rude about Malcolm Turnbull, we'd be like, nah, pause. Doesn't fit our rules of communication to stay positive and dignified and respectful in our communications. And maintaining that high road was really important because if you're up here and it's very passionate, it's quite easy to get distracted and start fighting down in the mud, and that wasn't going to help us towards our end goal. So using that passion and managing it to keep people aligned towards the end goal was really important. And then the other side of it was that this passion was really exciting. There was something there that we could use. It was a resource. And so we encouraged people to go and have offline conversations, take it to the men's shed, down to their grandma down south, have those conversations offline, use that passion in that way, and sort of transfer that, the passion and use it as a resource to get the campaign message across. So that was a really exciting campaign and a good example of an activated community and how you can both manage the passion and then use the passion as a resource. Here we've seen some local council examples. Wave Park is a classic. Does the mic keep dying, or do I keep moving it out of focus? That's what it is. Sorry, I get really excited. I like to gesture. And the other one is the Midland Oval, which we all saw a height of passion, what was it, a month ago now or so, at the City of Swan meeting where it's actually bloodshed. And so these are very passionate communities that are organizing online and taking it offline into activism in their community, showing up at council meetings and getting a point across to affect change in the way that they want to affect change, both to protect their green space or protect the environment. So now I'm going to hand over to Anthony.
Thank you.
Oh, two mics.
There's two mics. Thanks for that. So I guess the problem that we've come here to talk about today, this is a kind of a silly example, but recently, if everyone knows the Coles story, do they care more about the baby boomer on Facebook complaining about the 15-cent bags, or do they care more about the planet? And I think that's kind of a message that we wanted to try and get across. Are the messages you're seeing on Facebook, because they're loud, because they're visible, because they're recorded, does that mean we respond to those ones, or do we respond to the larger needs? This is not new. I think you all know that. NIMBYism started, I'm old enough to know when it started, back in the 80s. People have been active for a very long time, and that's not going to change. This is just the way that they activate. And just to go through the problem, you'll all know this, comments are public, they're on the record, people can see them. They get redistributed by media. Communities really have a megaphone now, so they have an opportunity to talk to a wider audiences.
We're going to swap mics.
Oh.
It's not being tracked.
Oh, that's no good. That's better. Speed of communications. Councils aren't necessarily set up to be very fast and respond quickly to issues as they emerge. Facebook's the exact opposite. We're going to talk about Facebook today because we just don't have the time to talk about every single platform that you might use. We've got 20 minutes today. But the principles will work across them. We've got people behind a keyboard, we're calling keyboard warriors, keyboard trolls. They love being online. They love to create problems. Disassociated interaction, by that I mean what we find ourselves in is people being a lot more passionate, a lot more vehement online than they would in a real life situation. So one of the main things we're going to talk about today is how do we bring people off that online environment? How do we get that passion away from disassociated interaction into an associated interaction? How do you personalise interactions so that you can do what happened with Emma's example with marriage equality and try and bring it down to a relationship to try and talk about how we interact with people on a personal level, because people aren't going to be as passionate, as ridiculous, quite frankly. They're not going to troll as much if you have this personal interaction. Of course, it's easy to gain momentum. It's so simple to share and like, and you can have a PM leadership bill in about 5 minutes and everyone in Australia knows about it. This is the power of social media, and we know all about that. In fact, I'm not sure if we still have the same Prime Minister right now. So where do councils find themselves in all this? I unfortunately don't have a silver bullet for you today. This is, I guess, anyone who tells you that there's going to be a simple solution to this is probably lying to you. I think councils find themselves today in this environment where you're a risk-averse kind of organisation. So in that environment, councils are coming into it not as flexible and responsive and, I guess, nimble as that environment requires. So, I mean, the first advice that we give you is to try and identify those issues early. This is what you're doing already. This is stuff that you're skilled at doing, which is working with communities, engaging with communities, identifying issues and addressing them. That's not different to this, and that helps avoid things going online. I think councils, being representative of the community, are reluctant to be confrontational. I don't think it's a bad thing, but it also means that you're reluctant to necessarily engage online very actively, particularly when there's issues of concern and there's multiple opinions on a particular issue. So we'd like to have a chat about how do we come to a consistent message and how do we kind of get to a point where we can respond quickly and we have a set of key messages perhaps, or an understanding amongst the council of who's got the role to address those issues. You're also in an environment where there's a few members, but it's kind of deep issues. So if you think about the Adani coal mine, which is in Queensland, became a major issue for a Melbourne election a few months ago. Melbourne's got nothing to do with Queensland, but because it was an environmental issue, those issues, no matter where the geography was, became quite deep. So it's about understanding that they're issues more than just local areas. So I think we talk about scope is by interest and not just by geography. So again, I think the two things I wanted just to explain there's no silver bullet, and people having narrow specific issues is really not new. So I think the first thing I want to talk about here is, this is what you're used to. It's about early engagement starts with identification. There's lots of ways that you can monitor the channels that are coming through. This is hard work. There's no real quick solution to this. There's no software that I can recommend to you that will raise the issues to you and immediately give you an email every morning telling you these are the things you've got to watch out for today. There's no software like that. So it's all about hard work, and it's about doing the things that you would normally do, which is talking to the customer service staff. It's talking to the people in your networks. It's talking to counsellors, and it's getting those issues elevated to you. So it's engaging yourself into the process. Those things would be ratepayers, residents boards, whinge boards, people on Facebook, local media, precinct committees, people who are going to precinct committees. Do you know those people? Are they giving you the information from those precincts? The council meetings, who's giving that information? How are they raising issues to you? I think this is all about human resources, all about training. But what are you training those people? What tools are you giving them to identify those issues? So I think the second point here is, how do you evaluate genuine issues? How do you get them sent to you? You need to be thinking about how you equip people to sort, to educate people on how to monitor those issues. So if you're talking customer service staff, what are the kinds of things that they will be looking for? They know which issues are going to be, which are going to elevate. What are the types of things that you're looking for too? It's about going through and telling them the issues that you're interested in identifying, the process of bringing that to you and bringing to the communication staff. And I think we need to have a think about the types of things that would identify themselves as being big issues. Because online we're going to have thousands of people talking. How do we talk? How do we identify those things? So we talk about things like recurrent issues, external amplification, what's getting traction outside the social media environment. If it's getting traction in the local media, then we know that there's some kind of issue there. The scale or reach, the breadth of audience. So is it reaching hundreds of people, tens of people, thousands of people? They're the things that you need to be looking out for. Leakage. I don't know if anyone follows the Moora College fiasco, but if the state government, if a minister talks about a particular issue, have nothing to do with education, someone will come out and talk about Moora College and say, well, you know, why aren't you addressing this issue with Moora College? So if you're posting things that are quite generic and you're getting responses about another issue, to me that raises red flags about that being a big issue that you need to be putting forward as a risk. Leakage. Now what do I mean by leakage? That's Moora. Okay. Sentiment. Just trying to think what I meant by tested offline. And then I've put in here that we need to build it into the process. So it's about ensuring that these issues you're kind of in the centre of these issues, and they're brought back to you. I might just pass back to Emma now.
Yeah, easy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's especially important, you know, when you build it into the process. I know a lot of you have business units and project teams and a whole bunch of people who are interfacing with the community at a lot of different points. And how often does that problem only come to you when it's been so far past any type of engagement that's meaningful that it's a big problem? Yeah, great. You should get yourself inserted at that point really early. And so it's also educating your project teams and your business units to be on the lookout for similar types of issues like this. So page purpose. So when you're engaging online, it's good to start with the why. So why are you starting social media? Who has had their boss say, let's do Snapchat? Why would you do Snapchat? So I think starting with that intention of why you're online in the first place, what type of space do you want it to be, is really, really important. So the other aspect of this and addressing it right up front is getting aligned internally. You have a lot of different stakeholders internally at a council. You have councilors, the mayor, the executive, your team. Everyone should be on the same page of why you're on here, what you're using it for, and what purpose it serves to the greater good or to the strategic goals of your organization. Who is your audience? Most often this will be your ratepayers, but for some councils I know they're looking bigger, broader. Maybe they want to be a tourism site, so your audience, you'd have a specific segment that's actually targeting those people. Defining that will help you with your engagement. What is the experience you want your followers to have? I think a lot of councils aim on the side of very serious and responsible. You can make it fun, you know, maybe you want to have people feel like they can go there and have a safe space to whinge or ask questions or engage with the council at a deeper level. You know, what's the experience? What do you want people to walk away feeling like after engaging with your council online? And what are your key messages? I cannot stress how important key messages are and values of your organization. Key messages are one of the best toolkits in your tool belt. If someone is going at you online, boom, key message them. You know, it's all about, you know, the opportunity to be able to get into the Perth CBD area. That's what we're doing. Insert key message here. But key messages are really important. What it also does is it gives your counselors something to say. How often, you know, no one likes to look stupid, and so when people are called out, they sometimes respond in the moment. Whereas if you had maybe prepared key messages, they would have that toolkit to go back to and that same line to use in their discussions. Again, with marriage equality, great example of people who perhaps were not, you know, discussing issues in the most positive, respectful, and dignified way. I could easily pull them up on it because we had agreed it to those values. Winning, you know, the purpose to also encourage alignment is the roles of the organization. So what's everyone's role to play here? The comms teams, I know across all your organizations, sometimes customer service is in, sometimes engagement is in, sometimes it's marketing as well. So, you know, compliance was in one. I was like, wow, that's a big bucket of things. So each of, you know, however your council is structured, you and your role is definitely a piece and has a part to play in engaging with people online. The counselors are certainly a stakeholder group that you need to manage. I personally think that counselors need to have a facilitated space to engage with the community and key lines of how to engage with the community and be informed on how they can engage with the community and be informed when they go to the community. Perhaps doing some of that preventative work will help the prevent the treatment that you might have to do at the, if something does happen and if counselors do start to respond in the moment. Mayors and CEO, they're often the executive, the decision maker who's going back to the community, so they have that really formal role of, yep, we heard what you said, let's go back and share those, share our findings with you and thank the community for their input, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then community members are showing up because they want to be engaged and they want to get informed. So, back one, sorry, this clicker works now. Ta-da! So this graph is hilariously simplistic for this point, so bear with me. How many of you manage, like, our admins on your Facebook page? Oh, yes! Okay, how many of you ever go look at your analytics and reports? Okay, good, great, awesome. Well, okay, do that, it's important, data's your friend. So with these activated communities, they're often the noisy minority, right? That's a term we're all familiar with. So a part of it is trying to activate the silent majority. And this is, again, a very similar principle for communications offline, and then bringing it into the online space. You really want to make sure your audience is a representative sample of your community. And that means different things online to offline. In offline terms, that means, is this a statistical sample of the community based on ABS data or profile ID, whatever it is? That's kind of what that means offline. Online, that actually means, do you have representative segments of your community? Because again, online communities are organized different. They're organized around issues or around specific localities or passion. Heritage is a great example. That's a very local issue, but isn't necessarily bound by geography. So you want to think of your audience online as segments and people who are bound not just by geography or demographic, but by issue-based or proximity to an issue. And I think that when you've identified those segments, to increase representation, you should actually identify what your gaps are. I bet youth is probably a pretty big gap for a lot of your councils. So identify where the gap is, and then put some KPIs against how you're going to actually grow that audience. Maybe put some advertising dollars behind it. Use different content to engage that community. And yeah, so that's kind of widening the audience and making it a more representative sample, which leads straight into informing the community. It's a pretty strong community engagement principle that you should engage with the community in the way they want to be engaged. So knowing your audiences, knowing your segments, really important to understanding what type of information, how you're going to put it out there, what time you're going to put it out there for the community to best receive it. Again, I'm just going to use that youth example. I think if you're trying to get more young people involved, maybe you should post more memes and GIFs, because they're flicking through their news feed quite fast. They aren't going to stop and watch a video. You're going to get them through different content and get that passive information digested in a different way. Also, sub-tip, I think you should, how many of you have youth committees or a youth advisory board for your councils? Ask them how they want to be engaged online. Let the community tell you how they want to be engaged. Maybe this is not new, but I get really excited by it, so bear with me. So yeah, and different methods. Again, so memes, GIFs, quick flick, that's a lot of the younger audience. Your middle and older audience will actually stop and watch a video. So that 3 to 10 minute video, that'll actually be someone who will stop and absorb that content at a bit more depth. They have the time. They're willing to move a bit slower through the social universe. Yeah, and again, it's kind of, when you're informing the community, the benefit of social media is you get that passive interaction. Even while they're scrolling through or looking through their friends' baby photos or engagement this, barbecue that. Oh, wait, hey, look, that road's going to be closed. Good to know. Keep on scrolling through. So using it almost as like a passive information, what's the quick, easy to understand way you can educate the community? Really important way to use it, social media, to inform people. And then the last piece is reactive media. So you guys have a lot of misinformation being spread online? Yeah? I think you do have to respond to some misinformation. There's genuine facts that you can help educate people around, and so you should respond to those. But then there's the trolls, and you don't want to feed the trolls, and we've all fed a troll and gone down that hole, and it's terrible. So basically, Rick tried it, and it's kind of a touch point of understanding how to respond and when, but respond with the genuine, accurate information when you can, and when you do encounter a troll, try and take it offline. Hey, so-and-so, would love to chat to you about this. Why don't you give me a call? hey, why don't we move this to the DM and let's address this issue more directly, one-on-one. Doesn't work every time, but that would be my first recommendation when moving and dealing with the trolls. Another great rule to deal with the trolls, this is also in your tool belt, is the rules of engagement. If you set expectations of how people should engage on your page, you can hold them to it. And there's two excellent examples up here, and they're excellent for different reasons. City of Coburn has this beautiful tab right there, smack dab where you go to look for information, posting guidelines. So, really great. It's very highlighted. It's a clear signpost of where to find that information. Second, town of Vic Park, really love their plain language. Makes it super easy to understand. Every single ratepayer and resident in their area can go here and understand what the rules of engagement are. Very straightforward. So this is a really important tool because, and especially for moderation. If you have a troll, if you have someone who's not engaging in the way that you think we should be engaging and that you've said we can't engage, you can easily follow up and say, hey, we clearly set posting guidelines. Please reference the posting guidelines. This is outside of that scope. I'm going to take down this comment. And that helps almost depoliticize it. You're not targeting them. There's clear posting guidelines. The rules have been set. And it kind of gives you that distance and that egalitarian almost way of moderating social media.
And I think just on that, say use them consistently, but the more you use it, the less you can be accused of doing the wrong thing to those people. So I think when you see it, address it, get on top of it, and then that will become the expectation on the page.
Mm. And sorry, we both have colds, so we're like, go drink some water. The other piece is personalizing it. People relate to people. I'm less likely to be mean to another person. I think sometimes institutions, companies, they get in a bit of sticky situation when they become this faceless thing that responds as a whole, when it's not actually like, hi, I'm Joe, I work at the City Council, I'm just responding to you, boop, 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 boop. People will be more upset at the council than they would be at Joe. So use a bit of humor, be yourself, put a bit of personality into it. Woolsworths does some really fun memes that bring people in and are engaging, but then they also sign off all their comments with a name or initials. You can even go more anonymous than that. I know some corporations where they've made up these personas, like Betty always responds. I'm like, is it really Betty? But whatever. I will be less mean to Betty because it has a name. And sharing that personality in those people first messages. Yeah, don't do that, sorry.
Because, at least we've got a name and they've got someone to chase inside the council as well. Some people might not like that, but at least it gives people responsibility for their actions and their comments. And also it gives someone, oh, geez, I don't have to do this online. I can go and speak to Betty, or I can give her a call. And it just gets it offline and it depoliticizes it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then so Wade, our digital expert, he helped us with this. He had this great line where he said, just act like a friend. Be helpful, concerned. Oh, sounds like this is really bothering you. Why don't you give me a bell? Oh, hey, let's take it offline in DM. Just act like a friend. It's a really great way to sort of manage that and make it personal. So I talked a little bit earlier about the role of the mayor and that decision maker coming back. Another community engagement principle is having a feedback system so that you can show the community how their input informs decision-making process. These are some really good examples of mayors doing that all around the world, well, specifically the US and Australia. So we got up here, Mayor Michael B. Hancock from City of Denver. He does a Friday letters opening. That's how he's decided to do it, and talk about the week in a recap through reading letters he's received. Here we have Town of Vic Park. They just started this last week, I think. This is from last week. Recapping the council meeting. Quick hits, here's what happened, here's what we discussed from the mayor, feeding back to the community, informing you about it. Mayor Ron Nirenberg, he's from City of San Antonio. He's having a beer with a citizen and just a casual chat and being very transparent about it, which I love. Here, Lord Mayor of Sydney is also doing the SIMSO system, explaining what happened at council meetings, doing the feedback process. And here we have a mayor, Charity Wells Armstrong, mayor of Kankakee, Illinois, literally whoop whoop, Illinois. She's doing this from her porch, so don't overthink it. It just has to be direct, authentic, in your own tone of voice, but completing that feedback loop to the community. We heard you online. Your input informed us all of these different things. Remove page rating. This one's pretty simple. Are you a restaurant? No? Are people going to compare councils based on ratings? This metric doesn't make sense when it comes to a local government context. It simply is a false measurement. There's no way to standardize it. There's no way to standardize two councils or compare experiences at councils. And all it does is give an avenue for trolls and dissenters to go and make some noise on your page. These are current examples on council pages right now. So, get rid of that. Branding. So I thought this was a really good example, Town of Vic Park, again, picking on you. But social media is a really great place to reinforce your branding. What is your purpose of your community? What is the brand and the key messages and the key lines you want to get out? What are the values of your community? And also a really good example of moving people from that online space offline. So very human, very friendly, very easy to understand. You can call, email, and go to their engagement page. Lots of ways to move people, again, from that online space to that offline space. And the last page, I don't know, Anthony, did you want to take this? Yeah. No, right.
Okay, I think one of the big questions is how do we engage with pages that are not yours? So what are the rules of engagement? How do we get engaged? One of the things that we think is really important, which I think we've tried to say here, is to make your page, your space, welcoming, friendly, get as many people as you can onto that space. You know, encourage fast, open, know your debate, know your key messages, respond quickly, personalise it, all those kinds of things. Understand that a lot of these community groups that you're listening to are echo chambers, they're bubbles of the community, they're small groups, they're talking to one another. So you need to make a decision if you want to engage on those platforms. Mostly I'd say no. Because a lot of the times when you enter those spaces, you're seen as a spy, or who's this person from council, etc., etc. So follow the same rules as you would in an offline environment. You know, if you wouldn't just turn up to someone's meeting with it unannounced, you'd expect to be invited, you'd have a role, you'd know what the rules of engagement are. So this might be hard for a lot of people, particularly councillors, to follow, but I think it's a really good set of rules that you might want to pass on. Respect the space, only be invited in, respond appropriately, and don't hide. But if you can monitor without getting into that group, then that might be a good way of finding those issues that might go even further. So that's something that you can do. And we've run out of time. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Emma and Anthony. Emma and Anthony will be staying till morning tea, so if you have any questions for them, you can grab them then. And we just have a small token of our appreciation for you. Nobody's going to grab it for you, though, so I'll have to. Thank you very much for your time and insights. So our second presentation today is from Jane Muirsmith, Managing Director of Lenox Hill. Digital has changed consumer behaviours permanently. Customers are now more connected, more savvy and more vocal than ever. Local governments in WA are experiencing firsthand the weight of community expectations as residents bring their preconceived ideas on how they wish to be engaged and what they expect to receive in return from their investment. Jane will share her experiences to demonstrate how local governments can get the most out of their digital communications. She will also share the latest digital trends that her clients are utilising and why. Please welcome Jane. Oh, sorry, do you need a moment? I love technical hitches. Nope. 4. Is that right? Okay, now could we please welcome Jane?
Well, thanks very much. Thanks very much for having me here today. I'm looking forward to spending the next half an hour with you. Just a little bit about, I guess, where we're from. Lennox Hill I started 4 years ago, and we're a digital advisory company. We're not an agency. We sort of help government, private and public companies invest in digital, and it's sort of the broad spectrum of how do you use digital, what capabilities do you need, where should you be investing, everything from what technology should you use and how much you should invest to how well you measure it. And obviously social media is a big part of that. So over the last 4 years, so I used to run digital for Bankwest prior to that, and I felt in the market there wasn't really good, there were lots of people that could do lots of stuff, whether they could build a good web agency or write good content, but what I found was there was a gap in terms of people coming in, really working with me on what are my goals, where should I prioritise, and also how do I help people that don't work in my world understand the importance of what we're doing and why we're doing it. So that's kind of why I set up the company, and Katrina's here today. So if we go to the next, does this one work? Does it work? Yeah. So I'm just going to talk to you about changes in consumer behaviour. I won't spend a lot of time on that because you guys probably know that better than me, and you're probably a lot younger than me as well. So yeah, you're probably much more on Instagram than I am and the such like. I'm going to go through how we write social media strategies because I thought that might be really important. And I'm also going to talk about operating models. So we've helped banks, insurance companies, government entities get onto social media and also break through the resistance that they might be getting from, particularly at the top levels, around why you should be in social and how you're going to mitigate those risks. So I thought that might be something a little bit practical for you. And then lastly, a couple of trends that we're seeing. So look, these slides, I've got 2 slides on this. The left one really just talks to, it's not just the youngies, it's the oldies online, and just recognising that they are as engaged as the young ones. The second one is talking around mobile and what we see with most of our clients, around 50 to 60% are using mobile devices to access them digitally. And if they're less than 50%, then normally it means that the website isn't working well enough or is not functioning in the way that it should be. The one over on the left talks about...
Sorry to interrupt you, just for the video, apparently you have your hand over the sensor.
Does that help?
Can you move it up, apparently?
There?
And put it a little closer to your mouth.
Oh, okay. Is that better? Sorry. The one on the left talks about online self-service. So we do quite a lot of work in helping, as I said, government and companies build digital capabilities, whether it's online authentication, whether it's online payments, whether it's capturing data and then streamlining those back-end processes so you're not having lots of spreadsheets to deal with, and that's certainly a more and more emerging area. And then over on the right, look, Aussie Post have got massive budgets that we'd all love to have, but really just talking there about the cross-channel use of behaviour in one channel and how they use it in their call centre and vice versa, and we're starting to see more and more around that. Okay, I won't go into that. I also just wanted to mention around, as marketers, and I was really impressed to see the attendees list today, I guess you guys are there fighting for attention and it's getting tougher and tougher. And one of the things I just wanted to mention was in your marketing strategy, it's not just about target audience and key message anymore. It's also around timing, frequency, and sometimes repetition. And I certainly think in social media, there is a cause for repetition of message from time to time. And I went to a conference last year in Las Vegas. It's the biggest digital conference in the world, 4,000 people. It was just the best week. And Guy Kawasaki spoke, who's one of the most notorious and most successful social media bloggers in the world. And he just showed us this campaign he ran, and just the same message 3 times during the day at various times, and just tweaked in slightly different ways, and how that did not create a negative perception of his brand through that repetition. We've also recently worked with a very big car retailer who you might know over the Causeway in Shepparton Park, and part of that was how do they use social media. So one of their challenges is when it's raining, People don't want to come and do a test drive. So acknowledging the weather, acknowledging the challenge with the kids. We've got stuff to engage your kids while you take the test drive out, and really around the messaging. So is it a Friday night? Is it a Saturday morning? How do we get people to come in and actually engage with our product and talk to us? So I think that's the challenge. What you guys are doing is so much more complex than when I first started in marketing. I won't talk to that. Look, this is a stat slide. I couldn't not have it. I guess the key takeaway here is around just conscious of the dominance of women in social media and thinking about that. The other thing is the enormous growth we've seen in the use of Instagram, again in that lower age group area. We recently worked in Queensland with a local government, and they had a really cool creative campaign they were running. And it was targeting small business and establishment of small business in their area. And they were on Facebook, but the CEO just wouldn't go there with Instagram, and they were just hitting up enormous resistance from him in terms of expanding the use of social media. So we really worked with them on not only why it was important to actually, I guess, leverage your investment. If you spent that money in doing a great creative, and there's some amazing agencies out there that do amazing creative, then why you wouldn't actually leverage that to a broader reach. And then also we helped them with defining that operating model so he could walk away from that conversation feeling comfortable that they were going to use another new channel. So a strategic social media approach, and I'm sorry if this might seem a little basic, but I think it's, I think what I see is with social media, in talking to particularly senior folk that don't work in your world, if you go sort of too tactical, they kind of get lost in it because they don't actually understand it. So we really start with looking at the business context. So at the end of the day, and the brilliant speakers before also spoke about this, so are you trying to get a message out there? Are you trying to change perception? Are you trying to change behaviour? Are you trying to improve customer or resident engagement in your local area? And I think you've got to be really clear and have your priority objective and your secondary. Down the bottom, second thing is around your resident or your customer needs. So who are they? How do you segment them? Do you need to segment them? Are you overcomplicating that? Always challenge yourself around that. What are their drivers and what are their needs? What we do see in this space, some of you may have done some persona work. We're seeing a lot of companies do work in personas, and look, we do them too. But what I will say is I'm seeing overinvestment in them. So we're seeing quite a few companies spending a lot of money, and I think you can actually spend too much and make them too complicated. But I do think they serve a purpose for people in the organisation to understand the audience outside the organisation. Then on the right, we look to the external environment. So that's not only, and I appreciate with local government, sometimes you may or may not have a competitor per se, but you have other things going on in the environment that you need to be conscious of and thinking about that will impact how you roll out or how you approach your marketing and communications. And then last but not least, your metrics and ROI. So what have you invested in, how have you measured it, and how are you going to track? And so those four are, I think, the cornerstone to developing a really good strategy. The other thing, obviously, as marketers, and we all learnt this at university probably, or from people that we've worked with if we didn't go to uni, so really thinking about always tying it back to the vision and values, because that's the language that most people understand in your organisation. Looking at your target audiences and then thinking about your key messages and the tonality you're going to use. So this is one of my favourite slides. So we recently did a fairly large school, and we wrote this slide. It's sort of, we've used it a few times, but let me just walk you through it because I think it's quite a good one. So over on the right, you've got your target audiences. And in this instance, we've done residents, businesses, visitors, etc. You might have tax-paying residents, there's non-tax-paying residents, visitors, whatever your segments are. And then all the touch points that you have got as the lead marketer or marketing coordinator within your council available to you. So we've got what we call the pull channels. So you've got your public website, You might have your portal where they might log in and authenticate themselves and conduct some transaction. You've got mobile app, you might have a mobile app, maybe you'd need it, maybe you don't. And you've obviously got your customer service location, so your physical locations or your telephone line. So this is when you've got a captive audience coming to visit you. So I might be coming to pay my bill or my rates or register my dog. But as a marketer, this gives you an opportunity to tell them or communicate to them what you need to in your role. At the bottom, you've got your push, what we call your push channels. So this might be, I've put in a few non-digital ones here because I know that they are often used in local councils. So obviously your printed marketing materials, your community newspapers, your email campaigns and your digital advertising. So that's when you're trying to put and you might be well paying to get your message out there. But social media obviously has got a very special place. It's the one where it's two-way. And we talk about using it to inform, engage, inspire or amplify your existing marketing spend. Over here, around community engagement and audience strategy, again, looking at your target audiences. Do you need to service them? Do you need to sell to them? What is it that you're trying to do with that group? And then what do you need beneath that in order to support and make your marketing strategy effective? So your governance and operating model, your digital development roadmap, and that might be everything from functionality through to content, depending on where you need to spend your budget. Content strategy and plan, your branding and style guide, and then also understanding what do we need in-house and what do we need out-of-house, and that's what we do a lot of work with our clients on, is really helping them understand. Bring in the external people that when it really adds value, but you should be able to do a lot of the operational and mechanical stuff internally and have some really good people that know how to do that. And then over on the left, obviously the resources that sit behind that, your digital platforms, your content, be it informational or promotional, and then your technology. And in technology, it might be a content management system, it might be a CRM, it might be your social media monitoring tools and software that you might use, or your marketing automation. Am I going for time? 10 o'clock. This slide really just talks to when you are, again, looking at your social media strategy for the next year, thinking about the channel. And again, what is the role of each channel and helping people internally understand their role. So over here, we've just sort of got some more boilerplate content, but Facebook, who's it talking to? Why are you using it? How much effort am I going to put into it, and what's my budget allocated? And really thinking strategically about Facebook. In this instance, we've got 4 of them up here. But this, I think, really helps people understand your overall holistic approach to social media. And then from there, you might drill into your recommendation, and this is sort of, again, another template we've done. How often do you want to be posting on it? What are the interaction types? So is it imageries, is it videos, is it content? And we did, when I saw the attendees last night, I went to some of your social media destinations, and there's certainly some great work already in the room that many people here are doing and really actively using different types of content. Obviously paid, do you need to complement that even to create that initial groundswell around some meaningful content? Also user-generated content, how do we repurpose that? And then also how are you going to measure it? So likes, posts, etc. And then also just sort of these basics around the channel and the tactical things that you need to consider. In this instance, we've just listed the hashtag. Content calendars. I know this is very boring again, but something really important to, I think, really have some structure around to empower your people to run it really well. And again, thinking around, is it a product campaign? Is it a service campaign? Is it a blog? Is it a user-generated story? Is it a customer story or a resident story? And then really planning that to the best that you can, even though, as we know, social media can't be controlled, but you can certainly take a lead position in how you want to best use it. Also, we would encourage you to have best practice rules around how you use social media, such that if you're not in the office or your allocated person is on vacation for a couple of weeks, you have, I guess, a laundry list of things for them to consider when they're posting the content. And we see so many times when great content gets put up or posted, but they haven't gone through just the basic checklist of what are all the things that I could do to make sure that I've amplified this content and made sure that it's I guess, getting the maximum bang for buck out of our investment in our time and in our dollars. Oh, I should mention this one. As I said, we're working in Queensland recently, and they had 2 Instagram handles, and Katrina up the back knows, she'll be on the panel later, knows more about this than I, but the Sunshine Coast Council had the 2. So one was for residents and people locally, and one was for around travel and tourism, and that was where they really leveraged user-generated content and created a groundswell around actually visiting the location. So also have a think not only about the channel, but then how many I guess, destinations do we need to have? I'm just going to walk you through this as well, because I know I'm running a bit short on time, but your operating model, so I'll just go through it. So as we've said, we've talked about channel, background and goals. Why are we doing this, and what are our objectives? Inquiry management and service. So how will we monitor it? What's the process? What's the escalation path? What are our SLAs? And what's the policy on removing posts? And I know the other companies spoke about that as well. When I was at Bankwest, I moved back from New York and I went and joined Bankwest for 4 years, and it took me 2 years to get them to agree to use social media. And we did a operating model that was a 141-page document. And part of that was, how do we divvy up the inquiries between service versus sales? But we also became very sophisticated in having red, amber, green. So there was a collective understanding so that if we did get the trolls, and if it was a red, then I would get the support at the executive levels that I needed in order to manage that issue. So I would encourage you to think about red, amber, green and how you structure and how you, I guess, categorise, and then also then how you report back to the effectiveness of the channel. Editorial and campaigns, the stuff that's the really fun stuff. So what's the creative idea? What's the messaging? I mean, this is all kind of as marketers we generally want to play. That's our comfort zone. Absolutely important. Management and maintenance. Who owns the account? And is it content versus functionality? Having a think around that as well, which doesn't always necessarily be the same thing. And that might be if you've got Facebook Messenger and Facebook Destination. And you're starting to see, obviously, use of chatbots on websites as well. So all those things, who owns, and it's not always, doesn't have to sit in marketing, I have to say. Login credentials and the process for contacting the social media network for support. Operating model, roles and responsibilities, governance model, training and development. So what do we need to stay on top of this? So at Lennox Hill, when we sort of live, eat and breathe digital, all my staff are for 4 hours a week expected to spend 4 hours a week just learning, going out online, seeing what's happening, who's doing what. And that's why I think part of the reason why I've got such really good, talented people working with me now, which is terrific. Rules of engagement, we've talked about that. Liking, sharing, reposting, metrics and reporting, and risk management. So archival and disposal policy. So how long do you need to retain the content that you publish? In most industries, it's 7 years. So have a think about that. So once something's put in the public domain, the quality assurance approach and the regulatory and legal risks. So I don't mean to scare you with all this, but I think if you've got this in place, it just sort of takes the noise out of the room and it will enable you to focus on how to really drive the channel. And last but not least, I just thought I'd talk about a few emerging trends in digital that we're seeing. So this voice assistance area, I believe, is going to fundamentally change the way people interact with companies and government. There's no doubt that voice search, and voice assistants are where it's all going to be at. And we're starting to see that. Obviously, you're starting to see a lot more use of bots on websites. Sometimes it's quite difficult to work out if you're talking to a robot or a human being. I would encourage you to have a look at CUA. They're based out of Queensland but do have offices here and there, and they're in the finance industry. And they have bots that have a name, and I haven't quite figured out if she is real or if she's actually a really well-trained robot. So I think this is going to start to really take off. We've talked to artificial intelligence. Again, if you've ever ordered flowers from 1800flowers.com, try it out. It's an amazing experience. You think you're dealing with a human, but you're not. And also, I don't know if there's anyone from Joondalup up here today, but they do some, amazing stuff up there, and they really look at how they're using data to inform how they communicate to people, everything from parking to traffic conditions, etc. And I think we're going to start to see more and more of that. And you're going to be asked in your role, how do we get this data? How should we be using it? And then how do you repurpose that back into the way that you service or communicate to your residents? And I think that's it. So I hope that was of value, and thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Jane, and we'll pick your brain some more later on the panel. Now it's morning tea time, so to keep us on track, what's the time? Nearly 10 past. So if we could please be sitting back down at 25 past 10 to get to our third speaker, that'd be fantastic. Use the facilities, tea and coffee, and there's now food at the back there. Excuse me, everyone. Thank you, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed getting to know some more of your colleagues. We're now on to our third presentation, as I mentioned earlier, presented by Andrew Mathwin, Managing Director of Firefly 360, entitled, Is There a Place for Personality in Local Government? The evolution of digital has truly changed how marketers view the world. The current media landscape is so different to even a couple of years ago, and it continues to change. To capitalise on the changing opportunities, we need to be thinking differently. Andrew's going to discuss how to reach our community most effectively now and what we need to be considering. So could you please welcome Andrew?
Sorry. Hand up high. Hello, my name's Andrew Mathwin. We're actually quite a new agency in Perth. We're operating in Perth and Melbourne. We're called Firefly. Our kind of mandate is just to bring some bright thinking, just some really smart thinking to Perth and Melbourne. My background is local government, so I worked at the City of Subiaco. I've worked in government, I've been a media advisor, so I kind of get your space. But I've also worked for Jetstar and Spotlight and Anaconda and sports betting companies. So very diverse. So I just want a really valid question to ask. So I might just ask straight up, who thinks there's a room for personality on your social media for fire? Great. It's a really good response. So we are a creative agency for the technology age, and the only reason I kind of bring our tagline up is because the world has now moved, and we have to kind of accept that it's all about technology, and we have to kind of accept that people are very well connected. So you actually need some really clever, creative ideas and to break through. And I think Jane articulated it really well, which was you need some frequency. So you actually need to probably do less. So less is more, and you need to do it better. So that's our challenge. So I'll flick through that. So there's a couple of trends, and there's trends on trends, but I kind of want to talk about some really topical ones at the moment. And I think I've been away for about 3 to 5 years, and I think the landscape has massively changed, and I think for marketers it's flipped on its head. And so I had a chat to a media agency that we use, and I wanted to get some national stats.
Hand up. You've got large
Sorry.
covering up the thingy. It's just to make sure they can receive it online. Hold it up here.
All right, there we go. Easy. I probably first got to work out how to use a microphone. So the first thing is we grabbed some media consumption stats, and we had a look at the last 5 years. So this is people 25 to 54, males and females, and everything we thought was true is true. So online, you actually have to look at online as mass media now. So it used to be a tack-on. It used to be something that we would think of as let's do a campaign, but let's add Facebook on the back of it, or let's do Facebook slightly differently. It's your primary media now, so it should be taking up a large portion of your dollar. TV's reduced, but slightly, so it's not as bad as everyone thinks. Everyone thinks you're turning off commercials and skipping, and you're on Netflix. It's only slightly reduced, only down by 10%. Magazines, I still think they have a place, down by about 11%. I work for Spotlight, and we had this discussion about catalogues all the time, but people love catalogues. So, and I think there's a massive place, and as much as the press stuff is depressing, it's a massive place for local government, I think, and it's also got a massive place for regional communities as well. So it just gives you a longer form, a bit of a different way to tell your story as well. Radio is really strong. Obviously, who's struggling now, anyone in newspapers, communities, obviously the layoffs in the community newspapers is a bit concerning, and cinema's pretty strong. But all that's happened is we've just moved. So we've just moved our media. So we are, newspapers have declined, but everyone's just moved online to their online side of the publication. So where there's, paywalls and things like that. So what is up massively is pay TV, stream video by 43%, and stream TV. So we have just changed how we consume media now. So we've just got to be across a lot more. And when I used to work in government and things like that, getting on the news, you'd want to either be on it for really good news or not be on it for other. So I think when I was at Super, we were doing the Crazy Johns, or someone was trying to take over the stadium. That's where we didn't want to be on it. So this looks at relative audience size. So you can see it's 100% when we compared it since 2010. So in the younger groups, younger demographics has really reduced. So it's not what it used to be. 55 plus, probably actually 40 plus, still will sit down and religiously watch the news, but it's just not what it used to be. It's probably down about 30%. So the beauty about social and digital is you can tell your own story. So that's what we're trying to do. The other thing that, and when you work in a really consumer-based business, this is kind of the future, and this is where we're at. So digital, I can measure every single dollar, and I almost got a little bit sick of a lot of people talking about marketing as an expense on the P&L, because every dollar you spend should have a return on investment. And I think previous speaker talked about setting your KPIs early before you do any activity. That's kind of the thing we always talk about, is what is success for you. But what we can do now, and this just gives you an example, so we can have someone, you can run a great video about a local event, promoting it, and so you could, and someone watches that, we can then understand if that person then visits the event, and then we can track if that video had any impact on that whole visit. So, and there's a lot of news at the moment about Google tracking everything you're doing and Facebook tracking everything you're doing. That's because they have so much data on us and they can follow you via your phone. So I think it's a discussion will be had. I don't think it's going to change much. I think Facebook's just changing a few things around the edges. But that's, when you're actually talking about business cases and you can do that, that's amazing. Like, would I spend $5,000 or an insert in a newspaper, or would I, for even less, know that I ran a video and took someone to an event and I got a bit of data out of that? So we need to adapt as marketers, and we need to just be real. So when I say be real, we actually just need to be really customer focused. So we need to know what our communities want really, really well. So, and we've got to talk their language as well. First thing, you'll hear a lot about me from video, but video is the new black. So Google, we were kind of talking to our rep there, and they were saying by about 2020, it's going to be about 70 to 80% of all content. And just from my experience, 15-second videos, short bite size, work so well. Even some people won't even watch 15 seconds anymore. It's a bit scary, actually. But video works really, really well, and it gets across your message really simply, because not many people read as much as they used to. The other one that we really think of, and the challenge that we kind of have as kind of marketers and comms people in the room, is people expect it to be personal. So people expect that we know enough about them and their issues to be able to personalise it. So the discussion about personas is a good one, and I still feel there is a really good place for it, but it's more around motivations and what's your fears and what's your drivers as a local community member. Like what is some of the family issues you're facing, and how can we help as a local government? How can we help you? So the big debate that's on at the moment is the Facebook, the Cambridge Analytica. Has anyone had to address this from a privacy point of view yet? Not yet. So the wave will come. Obviously in the UK they've got the GDPR issue. So whenever you sign up to a Facebook, a Google account, any app now, you're giving up your privacy. So if does anyone who uses Uber here? Probably most of us. What you've done is you've given up your privacy because you've given up your location and a lot of your details, so you can see where when the car is going to arrive. So we've given that up, so it's for convenience. And that's all the debate really is. So Facebook have always, in their long TNCs, they've always been very clear about that. But now it's coming up because they've, around the edges with some third parties, they haven't done the right thing. So I can't see convenience going away. I think we're going to get tighter with our privacy. So the rule around that is just tell people, if you're going to collect their data, tell them how you're going to use it. So if you're going to send them a Facebook ad because of it, which through retargeting, then tell, a lot of companies are putting pop-ups on their website to say, and you've probably seen it, say this data is, this data is being collected because we're going to use it for advertising purposes. I think for local government, we'd probably even take it that next step and would actually say that we're using it to give you really valuable information, which you're probably in a privileged position to do. So the other thing is we're really cynical. And there's two things. People are really smart. We're smarter than we've ever been. There's more to read, there's more to know, there's more information out there. So everyone in the community is really, really smart, and they'll understand, we need to understand that. And so what creators or influencers do is they create some authenticity. So they can say what you can't. So that's, and I use creators, not influencers, because I think you can just do some really clever campaigns. I think we did one with Kai, City of Arwell, a couple of years ago around the Dale, which was just about getting some different people with some different perspectives. So, and I just feel, the fake news, and that's kind of hit us a little bit as well. There's a lot of lack of trust at the moment. So I guess my challenge for everyone here is to try and win the hearts and minds. And I think if you can do that, you're a long way down the track of, bringing some personality to what you're doing. So, if you're talking about reconciliation action plans, don't just put your reconciliation action plan online for people to read. Try and get to the heart of the story. Try and get to the heart of why that's really important to people, and go out and have a word, and treat it like you're a journalist. So then you're tying in a bit of video, you're tying in, and you've actually gone out and got a perspective about it. So, which is hard, I know, but it's really important. The other thing is, and I just swap brands for government. So big brands struggle with this too. So we need to act more like people than government, and it's really hard to do it. But we've got to just talk like you're talking to someone else. And the perfect analogy I always had was, if you're at a barbecue, how would you talk to someone? And that's the way you should that should be your tone on social. And when you do that, you just become much more human. I think Anthony, was kind of talking about that, which is about just being relatable and honest and open. And if you make a mistake, you can own up to it, and that's fine. I think people forgive you pretty quickly now. But we just want to act more like people. But we need to govern as well. So that's probably a challenge. So the little exercise we run through is, we feel you just need a sweet spot. So it needs to be somewhere between you being the governing body and and owning the heart of the community. So the first thing that I'd probably ask you is, it's a really hard question to ask, is what is your purpose? So why do you exist? And what's at your heart? So what is unique about your area, and what can you really focus on? And there might be 3 or 4 things that you think is really important to your purpose, and then you need to target the passions of the community. So if you're doing any social content planning, you want to have something in the middle, and a lot of people call this a brand platform, or it's just some statement that brings it all together. So that's my challenge for you. And it won't happen overnight. So monitoring posts and going, oh, we got X amount of engagement on this post, it's good, but it's not the end game. You want to know what your current image is as a local government, which you're always going to get negativity on your page. We understand that, but there's something you want to be known for, and the great work that you're doing. And the only way to get there is to be really focused around what that pillar is in the middle. So if it's about families having a great time around a local community, then keep owning that and doing great content. Sam from City Coburn's asked me a good question. Where is she? There you are. She asked me a good question before, and I just thought it's a really interesting one because you're covered in issues. There's a lot of issues all the time, and so the question that I had was, is reach, organic reach, important as much anymore? So it's pretty low. I think at anyone, there's only I think one bit of content I've run in my time that I haven't put spend behind, and I think we got about 1 million views because it was the right time, the right place. It was just the right thing, but it's very rare. So you do need to focus your budget on having a bit of media spend, so Facebook ad spend, and doing less content. So the days of the content plan are numbered in my professional opinion. I think we've just got to be able to just tell much better stories. You still plan it. The days we used to do 4 posts every week, I think, are kind of numbered now, which will be controversial. So there are some new ways to tell your story. There's video storytelling, which we've covered pretty well, and it doesn't need to be professionally produced. Even the raw content is the best content. It just needs to be human, it needs to be real. It can't have too much spin on it, it just needs to tell the real. And you can add a little bit of spin at the end, but just try and tell a story. The growth of temporary content, whether it's Snapchat, it's a different way to tell the story, and I think there's some really clever ways that people have done it, which is almost like sneak peeks into the heart of an issue or a community. Showcase what's great. I think showcase what's really good about your local government. I think quite often we get focused on what we have to get out, which is about policies and things like that, which is really important still. I just think let's focus on the positive and be above the negative sometimes. And live streaming, which we're kind of doing today, it's all about the fear of missing out. There's a great opportunity to get a bigger audience, so it's not just people who are turning up to your events. If you're putting a concert on, it's about can we get a bigger audience to be tuning in at that same time. So there are, as a marketer, it's the golden age because we've got so many options and we can measure everything. So when we look at things, and this is for all brands, we focus on a couple of things, and context is everything. So there's brands out there who love to get higher reach. So if you're where I used to be, Spotlight, we're trying to reach as many females 18 to 54 as we possibly can with our media spend. In local government, it's actually lower reach. We want to be really relevant to a specific area. So that's a different strategy completely. And then there's 2 things you look at. You look at brand on the left. So do we want to tell our story about what we're doing well, and what's why we're doing policies our way? And then there's times we want them to respond to an event that's coming up, or submissions and things like that. So I still feel press, outdoor, native integration, which is just not an ad. It's just almost what used to be the advertorial side. Just things that have a story. I think that is really good, and content kind of fits somewhere in the middle. Facebook is brilliant at response. So that's kind of where it sits. If you want to get a response to an event and you want to be able to measure that, you can do it really well. And then there's remarketing and search. So there's just a way to look at things. And then you look at what is our measure at the end of the day. And I think local government is an interesting one. Well, what is your return on investment? So you spend $100,000 on across a year. how do you measure that? And I think that's a really big question. I think it's sentiment is really important, that you're improving the sentiment. And so when I worked at Jetstar, where we had 70% negative. Everyone would just complain. So we spent a lot of time about talking about the positives of travel and the types of stories that people getting off that plane and that emotion. So if we need to tap into a little bit of emotion, we can. And know your media rhythm. So there's a few things here. It's a bit of a hard one to read probably from there, but know what happens in the morning and what happens at night. So in the morning, radio peaks. So that's when you're planning your media, look at radio. And the other thing that peaks is social. We wake up, first thing we do is we check our phone. And I think intuitively we know that. And which, then you kind of ask the question, where does print fit in that? And I would say it actually fit somewhere there. This only covers digital, and then at night it changes a little bit. So what happens is we move onto YouTube. So we're how many people sit on their couch and just watch kind of YouTube clips? That's what's happening. That's what people are doing, especially the younger groups. And social just takes off at night. So I think it's just knowing it seems to be morning and night in terms of timing. And this is consistent for every brand I think I've ever worked with or for. So it's just knowing a rhythm and just being aware of that. So I wanted to talk about how you measure your investment. And there's three things that I would look at in terms of if you're putting up a case for wanting to spend more money in terms of marketing, which is what everyone should be doing. Is how many people have you reached with your message and how many times? So that's the reach and frequency debate. So, and that was the only reason why I was a bit controversial, that comment about the content plans, because your objective is to get mass reach. If you do lots of content and you're putting spend behind each one, you better do one bit of content and put a good amount of spend to reach, say, 50% of the community instead of 5%. So that was my only comment around that. We want to know, have we changed perceptions? So this journey we're going on, we're creating lots of content. Are we taking them to where we want to take people to? And that could be just positive perceptions about the great initiatives that are being done, and that might be what, as communicators, our role is. And sentiment is really important. Have we actually changed the people focusing on the negative to focusing on what's great about what we're doing in the local communities? So there'd be kind of three metrics I would kind of look at. That was, I just wanted to kind of throw a few challenging things out. As I was the last speaker, I thought we've run through a lot of strategy and a lot of functional things. I just wanted to kind of challenge our thinking, and so I think we'll open up to questions if you like. Hello. Yes. Yeah. Do you want to? Yeah. Sorry.
I'm Amanda. I'm from the Shire of East Pilbara. I just had a question about video. That's been something that I've been really interested in, and I could tell that it's really gaining momentum as well. And you mentioned that video is, one of the top things to look out for. There's a lot of video making tools out there and software, and in particular, there's a lot of sort of cartoony ones that sort of, so you've got these frames where you can say a quick quip or sentence, and then that's really what the video is made up of. So my question is, what's the difference between that or the actual real vision and footage of people? Is there a difference in that? Do you think one is more important than the other?
It's a really good question. I think you've got to kind of think about the purpose of the message you're trying to get across. So my worry with, especially for like these kind of cartoony kind of things, is it probably just doesn't have the seriousness of what we want to do. I think and you've kind of got to judge it. So I think about real people in real communities, and I think people will like to see people as well. So that'll be my only, and I think why not go out and do a quick vox pop on the street, and that could be just as effective as, because if it's too it's also too if it's too salesy, people just see straight through it. I did have a slide on anti-advertising, which was, we just don't like being advertised to as well, and that when you do cartoony things, it can kind of look like that. So that would be my only thing, is just probably some real vision would be great, yeah. Absolutely.
Questions for everybody?
Yeah.
Happy with that? Thank you very much, Andrew. Can we show him a round of applause? Take a seat, and I'll ask Jane from Lennox Hill to come up and join us on the panel, and she's also joined by Katrina Gollidge, Digital Advisor from Lennox Hill. I encourage everyone to take a moment to reflect on this morning's presentations and think about what questions you have for our fantastic speakers. Just for our video, we have a line of sight issue. Could I ask you three ladies, Dee and the two ladies in front of you, would you mind shuffling to behind those ladies? Just so that the camera can see who's speaking. And so that our online viewers can follow the conversation, could I ask, when people are asking questions, can you please wait for the mic over there to come to you to make sure that they can hear what's happening? And hold it properly. Don't put your hand down the bottom of the mic, otherwise you cover up the receiver and then they can't hear you. Okay. I have some preceded questions. So I have the first question while you're all thinking about what you're going to say. Katrina, Jane mentioned earlier about considering how many social profiles to have online, and I know that's certainly something I have debates internally about. Could you share your insight into your thinking on that?
Hello. Look, I think when you're thinking about creating multiple profiles, I would urge you to consider probably two key things. So firstly, what's the business driver behind creating a second profile? And the reason I say that is our experience with a client on the East Coast was they had two really conflicting business strategies. So one was to attract high-end CEOs and high-end businesses to the area, and then on the opposite side, they basically had to promote their tourism because that was where the core of all of their market was coming from. So they had these two really conflicting messages. So they actually set up a separate tourism Instagram account, and that worked exceptionally well for them because they got to push those two messages out through each different channel. Secondly, I would think about resourcing. So I would think that you're better to refine your channels, do one channel really well with the resources that you have and produce high quality content rather than trying to spread yourselves too thin. I mean, I don't know if anyone here is jumping up and down saying they're over-resourced, but I'm suggesting that's not a concern, so.
Thank you. Did either of you want to say anything on that topic?
I'll just echo that. I think it's just trying to scale what you're trying to do. So do one platform really well and just grow it over time. I think that I kind of agree with that sentiment. I think it's quality over quantity sometimes.
I might go off on a bit of a tangent because it was raised earlier around the persona of who speaks online on behalf of your council. Coming from a banking background, we had quite a few dilemmas around this because one of our female staff members did get stalked because she was the face of the bank at the time. And I think it's unfair to expect people to have their photos online to represent entities sometimes, albeit that we always want it to be authentic. So it's a real challenge. So I think, and as I said with bots, it's half the time you don't know if you're speaking to a real person or a bot. So I think we've got some real challenges as marketers because authenticity is the flavour of the year. But also I think privacy and employee, how far do we expect employees to go to represent their brand is another challenge. I don't know if that's controversial or not. But.
Thank you very much. Can I ask for the first question from the floor? Oh, where's she running to? One moment while the microphone arrives.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on what the issue was that was just raised. My profile was online recently, and not only did I get tagged, but a family member of mine got tagged as well, and it got quite nasty. So we didn't have a lot of choice but to sort of, stand up and say, well, your opinion is misplaced and certainly misinformed, so please, don't invade my privacy again. I am acting as a Shire officer. So that becomes a problem, certainly in the smaller shires. And so we've now decided that unless it is something really vague, we just keep it to the main business page and we don't share it to anything else. And hopefully that our page will grow in numbers and the Shire and the community members will start coming to that page only, rather than getting their information off other pages and expecting us to share to every other page that happens to be available.
Any comments? Are you happy? Next question. I've got a question from one of our online viewers. How can we take back conversations once they've been misrepresented by lobby groups? Good question. To volunteer. Don't all jump at once. Anybody going to take it?
You go. I didn't actually. How can we take back? What was it? I didn't.
How can we take back conversations once they've been misrepresented by lobby groups?
Take back. Accurate content shared through social. Number one is, I think, removal of content's really difficult. Number two is, I really believe in the normal distribution curve in social media. And what I mean by that is you've always got your 2% who are extremely positive, and then you've got your 2% who are extremely negative. And then if you get enough people engaging in a topic, it does tend to balance each other out. So particularly in the highly regulated industries we work in, which is obviously government being one of those, where there are misrepresentations or where there's been a direction of a conversation going in a certain direction, we'll try to beef it up and fluff it up so that it gets back into that normal distribution curve, rather than trying to retract content. I mean, one of the biggest challenges you might have had is with Google reviews, because you can't remove the reviews. And Google are really, this is the biggest concern for the digital professional, is their worldwide dominance. They just don't care. You report it to them and they just don't take it down, even if it's inaccurate. So I think then you've just got to bring in, the logical tone, and then that's how we've tended to manage it, rather than trying to be retracting or getting into legal speak.
We've done quite a bit of issue management in local government, so probably from perspective, the biggest error that kind of happens is when you own a position and then you change your position, because people will move. People will see that, and that's the most dangerous thing. So it can be misrepresented by other people, that people will take their own opinion and slant, and that's fine. Just own your position and just keep that really consistent. That would be my only advice around this particular issue.
I think lastly, just to add to that, what we've experienced with some of our clients actually in the medical space as well, part of the frustration is just feeling as if they're not being heard, and as someone mentioned earlier, that they're dealing with a faceless entity. And what we've found has diffused the conversation a lot of time is saying, look, hi, I'm Joe Bloggs, I'm the practice manager. Here's my phone number. I'd love to have a chat with you. Please give me a call. 9 times out of 10, she never gets a call, but it shuts the conversation down right there. So that would be my only recommendation.
Thank you. Another question from the floor.
Hi, I was just wondering, our main concern, well, not main, one of our main concerns for having social media as a regional council was the record keeping side of it. I was just wondering if you can enlighten me to what would the process be. For example, do I need to record every comment made, and if they do delete the comment, for example, on Facebook, how do if they've deleted before I could save it or before I could keep the record, well, does that mean, how would I get it back? Or for example, and as well as that, am I allowed to keep the record? Because for example, Facebook, there's names and personal information part of the comments. do I have to ask permission before I record that information into our database?
Do you guys feel equipped to answer that?
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but obviously we work alongside and with from time to time. Sorry, is that better? Oh God, all right, sorry. Embarrassing. Anyway, I think, my understanding is that you need to archive what you've published. And so you need to find a way with your technology advisors internally how you do that. There's quite a few different ways, but also making a stance. You might, as a council, decide to take an alternate stance of not archiving, but that's a business decision. I'd be certainly getting that clarified if I was managing social media, for sure.
It's probably going to come to a time where you also need to hook your social into your CRM. Sorry, up top. I don't think it's something. I think you just like doing. Yeah, sure. So if you can hook it into your CRM, so then you can actually log a lot of your commentary. And I think exactly right. You need to log your posts that you put out, and then you can actually pick and choose which ones are important, because there's from other customers. I think you don't have to log. From what I understand, you don't need to log everything, but you need to log if it's a question, a query that needs to be responded to in the right way. Then you log that. So yeah, that's how I deal with it anyway.
Particularly anything controversial.
Yeah.
I was just going to add to that, your internal records team, if you have one of those, certainly the advice we have is that absolutely everything posted on our profile is our responsibility to record, because we own that platform. We are required to capture all of that. We've just started using a new tool called Brolly, which we're finding really good, and I know there's other options out there, and that's saving us, obviously it does cost a few $1,000s for a year, but it's certainly saving us more time than that from when we were manually capturing those things, and I'm sure lots of people have experiences they could share if anybody wants to chat afterwards. Does anybody else have another comment on that, or next question?
We've been told We've been told that we don't have to capture everything if it's material that we're putting.
Can your records team tell my records team that?
Yeah. Because if you think we have phone conversations, we don't capture those as a record. If someone's asking what day my bin day is, it just doesn't need to be captured as a record. If you're putting marketing material up there it's really more ephemeral stuff that you're capturing it in the record system elsewhere, the poster or other material, we don't have to. It's more if it's something, God, if someone calls us back next week and asks about that, we'll be glad it's in the record system. And we started using different tools, and we've ended up reverting back to snipping and adding to our record system. It just seemed easier. But, yeah.
Thank you.
So here at Canning, we have close to 50% of our community that speak English, languages other than English in their homes, and there's around 174 of those languages. So in the digital space, what are your tips on reaching everyone in our community?
Good question.
I'm in the wrong seat. Well, I think there's two aspects. One is just the pure practicalities of multilingual, and as you know, there's in-browser translators, and then there's the other sort of when you're logging, you do it via the back end, the CMS. The in-browser, I've sort of done it more in an international scale more than I must admit within a local government, so good challenge. And I've found that they can be quite inaccurate, and if you're dealing with sensitive matters, that's tricky because you get the content approved and then how it gets translated, so then disclaimers and that. So that's the one thing. The other thing I will say is that I guess if I was in that role, I would think about, given that I assume you have multiple community groups around certain issues, bringing in representatives from the community to help you understand how to engage with those. So take it the old offline and maybe bring them in and have drinks once a month to help to talk to them about what are their current issues in their community and how can you better liaise with them and engage with them, because it's all around tone as well. So certainly I think that would be my approach to approach it as a bit of a journey and not assume you necessarily understand them.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. I mean, it's a challenge, and especially when you don't have the resource as well. So I think we came back. The way we've kind of approached it with a lot of local governments is you start off with the English, and you have a page, and then there might be some posts that you might want to deal with that are for particular groups. So we'll promote that to those kind of groups. But it's a challenge that a lot of brands face at the moment. But yeah, Google Translate and things like that just don't work, and it's actually really detrimental to your brand as well. So you would do want someone to get. I know sometimes you just get it wrong, and it's a firestorm ready to awaiting. So it's just and I do think you need some knowledge in that area to talk. So
I just actually thought about one of our clients. Kat knows very well, one of our legal clients. They had a lot of Chinese clients, and this sounds really basic, but we did a duplicate homepage just to show that they cared. I mean, couldn't replicate the whole site, but we got it properly translated. We had a message for them, so it was just to at least show, hey, we're trying. And I think even if you do that as a first step, then you get that two-way dialogue.
If you do get to the point that you do want to have separate pages for different groups, you can set up global pages as well. So you can set up different. So I'll talk about Spotlight. We created a Australia one, New Zealand one, Malaysia one, and Singapore one. They're all different languages and things like that. So you can get to a point. And so what the beauty about that is, if you want one bit of commentary, you can send it across all pages as well. So you can reduce your management of it quite quickly, but then it enables it to be really locally relevant to particular groups. So there are ways without having to do 4 times the resource. So yeah, just a point.
Last thing I'll add is I believe there's a WA-based company, I think they're called ITS, International Translator Service. And if you do have the capacity to plan your content ahead of time and you think, I've got 4 key messages to 4 key community groups that I want to get out, you can actually buy time from a translator service and get them to do that for you ahead of time. So you've got that in your back pocket and you can release it through social or your website over time.
Thank you. Oh, we have a question over there.
I was just wondering whether you think it's worth subtitling all of your videos on social media, and if you have any tips on the programs to use.
Do you think it's necessary to subtitle all videos on social? And I'm sorry, I forgot the second part of the question.
And any programs to use.
Did you hear that?
Sorry, just to clarify, when you say subtitle, do you mean add text throughout the video, or do you mean literally name the video?
Add text to English subtitles, so you don't have to watch it with sound.
Personally, I would definitely recommend that. A lot of users on social media in particular don't have their sound on, so if you don't have a subtitle for your video, your content is potentially getting lost immediately. And I know for me, as quite a lazy browser, I won't click on the unmute button unless I'm very compelled to. So if you've got a few critical messages there up front of your videos, I think subtitles are a really good way to get the most out of your video investment.
The other thing I will say, just from a Google optimisation standpoint, we were ever astounded to see just the naming of files that are uploaded. They call it video 1 dot whatever, and we're like, why don't you put the actual key message into the name so that it's findable? Yes, we still see a lot of that. It's astounding.
Yeah. When I was at Spotlight, we did a workshop with Facebook, and there was a couple of things they said. There's about 4 or 5 things you always should do with videos. Number 1 was always subtitling, for that exact reason, which is, people, I think they said about 80% of people just scroll and they don't turn the sound on, or it's too difficult, so they don't do it. So you do have to do that. The other thing they said, because people are scrolling, get your message in the first couple of seconds as well. So for big brands, it's your brand. You try and get your brand right up front as well. And edit it for mobile. so vertical video and those kind of things. So that was just a couple, I thought I'd give that feedback. But subtitling. In terms of programs, Google have some really good ones as well. So Google Creator, and there's a couple of really good free tools if you can edit yourself. You know, Windows Movie Maker, iMovie, they're still good if you're doing it at that end. Otherwise, you know, Adobe Premiere or those kind of programs, if you can get quite sufficient with that. But there is there's so much software at the moment out there. So I think there's a couple we've come across.
Sure. Susan, could you give Sam the mic, please?
Just on the subtitling and captioning, if you want your website to be WCAG 2.0 compliant for accessibility, all videos have to be captioned and have to have a transcript. And all local government websites should be, it's the law, WCAG 2.0 compliant. It's a really hard thing to achieve, but yeah, with videos, they have to have that.
Thank you. I have another question from online. Should we upload video on YouTube or Vimeo, which is more professional and gets more reach?
My perspective on it is depends what you want to achieve. So the beauty about Vimeo is you don't get ads. So that's probably for a start. So if you want to embed it into a website page, and you don't want any ads appearing, then that's the obvious place for it. If you're trying to build reach and you're trying to get the content really findable, YouTube being so linked with Google, it makes perfect sense that that's the place to be. And the beauty about kind of YouTube is people just stumble across it. Sometimes they look at one video and it'll recommend this next video, and that's how you grow it. So and it's got some better tools for advertising it. So. Yeah.
Thanks. I've got a question for Andrew. How do you think you transition a local government that's very formal to being more social on social?
Good question, Kai. I'll hold it. Right. It's really understanding what's at the heart of your brand or your local government. So there's probably a lot of local governments do exercise around brand and personality. You kind of got to know that and where you want to get to. So I think in social media, and I've been there, you get stuck in the day-to-day. There's a good session to be had around what do we want to be known for? So that's the big transition you need to make. And it's not a quick transition, but collectively at CEO and council level, that's what we want to know is what do we want to be known for, and what do we want to stand for, and what do we want people to think of us like? And then you put a plan in place to get there, and that's how you transition. But it won't happen overnight. And back to Jane's point, what's your KPI? So how are you going to measure that? And so a lot of brands look at brand uplift and sentiment and those kind of things. I think sentiment is a really good one. But yeah, that's what I'd look at.
The other thing I will say is that, Andrew's talking about driving change. It's so difficult. And if you're in the marketing comms area, it's not just about the marketing message. It's so much more than that. So I think, you hear some of the executives talk about test and learn and A/B testing or, fail fast. And yet when you go to them, they might, the reality is they don't buy into that sometimes. So I think bringing those, if you've got your 3 safe marketing and then one that's not as safe, and then encouraging them to let you take an informed risk or an informed approach, sometimes you can get over the line.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question if anyone's got a burning one. Oh, there we go.
Firstly, thank you very much for an excellent set of presentations this morning. I wondered if any of you have any experience with or thoughts on using WeChat as a platform to interact with Chinese markets?
I wasn't expecting that one. Little bit of experience in it. So WeChat is kind of the dominant media. So if we were tackling the Chinese market, that's exactly where we went. We went to WeChat, and that was, it's a completely different social network though, where the WeChat will be kind of what social networks will become, where you can hook everything in. So I always look at what is the dominant media in that market, and how do we actually try and own that. So I've only got a tiny bit of experience in it, but yeah, that's the way we approach that. So I think in China, that's great if you're an international brand, but there's all, I would just go back to the numbers always. So and I'd look at the numbers on Facebook as well. I'd look at the numbers of, I'd do some analysis on that. So.
We've seen some really interesting case studies using Snapchat, but it's really expensive. So most can't afford, and because it doesn't have the penetration yet, so I haven't seen WeChat actively used in WA, or a good case study of it. Snapchat, yes, but gee, you've got to have a decent budget. So.
Okay. Can we cope if we finish up? Yeah. Yes? Okay. I think we should give our presenters or our panel a big round of applause. Oh, don't run away. We have a gift for you. Thank you to everyone for your participation in that discussion, and of course our speakers for their insights. This is a small token of our appreciation. Thank you for sharing your time and knowledge with us today. So we're almost done. Just before we wrap up, we have a couple more Poll Everywhere questions. So if you could get out your phones or tablets again and enter the address into your browser if it's not still there. It's pollev, POLLEV.com/equalsummit379, in case you've forgotten. So the first question is, what were some of the main things you'll take away from today's session? If I had my phone, I think I'd be putting in that I like the sound of activating our silent majority on social to try and balance out the negativity. Not entirely sure how I'm going to do that, but something that I want to look at. I can't see. So the importance of video, getting serious about objectives, that personalities are important, that we can focus on one post and do it well, I'm assuming. To be social and friendly. I've always said that the clue's in the name, it's social media. Video captions and clarifying your KPIs. The importance of strategic approaches to social. Personalisation and storytelling. Subtitling videos. And networking. Targeting youth, always a challenge for governments, I think. Oh, and apparently we've reached the maximum again. Social media as more personal. How to hold a microphone, yes, good call. Need help to get our digital channel strategy over the line? Well, I think there's been some great presenters that maybe could help you with that. And we'll have contact details for all of them if any of you didn't grab them and want them. The growth in video online, understanding the differences in audiences and how we can target those on social. Really short videos. That was a surprise to me, that just how brief it's getting, that we're prepared to watch. Allowing time for research to stay relevant. Key messaging, using those key messages on social, and creating meaningful content. I feel like we all learned some useful things. I'm pleased about that. So our next question, which is the last question, and that's to help us get really useful information on what you'd like to hear more about at future sessions. So you'll see that in this one, not only can you submit ideas for future topics, but you can also vote on your preferred option from the topics that other people submit. This is where you're allowed to say things that don't relate to digital. Ooh, privacy. Yep, scary. Video, influencers, digital with zero budget. Yeah, that's getting harder. Instagram. Communication strategies, always good. What's down? Can people see that on their phones? Do you know? Creative campaigns in local government. Yep. I think we went into a creative industry for a reason, because we like the creative stuff. And you definitely can get away with it. We've done some cheeky things in the past and had really, really good results. That's awesome. Thank you very much. Do comments coming in. I'm feeling inspired already about the next presentation we can put together for you. I've certainly learned a lot today, and I hope that all of you have. I'm sure you have. That's it for the formalities today, but please don't rush off. Stay and enjoy some lunch and network with our fantastic speakers and our colleagues. So thank you, and we hope to see you at our next event.